I'm Glenn McGinnis, and this is Outburst. On the program, did this election highlight the issues important to you?
It did, but nothing really changed.
Not well enough.
No, I was actually quite disappointed.
A lot of times during the debates, questions were dodged, answers were dodged.
But first, as MPs gear up for a new parliamentary session and come back to Ottawa, many arriving for the first time, Canadians will be wondering what the game plan will be moving forward in this country after almost 2 years of a pandemic. We took to the streets to ask Canadians what they would like to see get done now that the voting is behind us and the hard work is ahead. Our question:
what would you like to see accomplished when Parliament resumes?
Affordable housing. I think that's important. They need to look into that to help people. Like you go to university and you do all the right things, you get a good education, you get a good job, but if you live in Vancouver or Calgary or Edmonton or Ottawa, God help you trying to buy a house, to make enough, to save enough to buy a house.
In order to accomplish anything, you have to work together. They have to understand this, because it's getting to the point here now where people are we're so fed up. They'll elect just about anybody as long as they promise you something, but then when they promise it, deliver it, or don't say anything about all. Don't make false promises.
I would like Justin Trudeau to keep his promises from the past election campaign in regards of the reform for electoral vote. Also, I don't know if we can get reimbursed for the pipeline that you bought, but it will be nice.
Well, affordable rent. Apartments for people, lights and heat included if possible. More updates in individual places, depends on where they are and what locations. And I imagine they do the best they can.
Better health care. Our health care is not really the greatest because we're always waiting in outpatients for like hours on end. And there should be more doctors and stuff like that. We don't really have the luxury of having many doctors, especially around here. So I think that we should have a better health care system.
First and foremost, I'd like to see us get that budget balanced. I think we're getting ourselves in a lot of trouble in terms of the spending. I understand the social programs, and especially with COVID and everything that's taken place, and the need for it. However, I think we're digging ourselves a hole long term, and we need to start to rein that in and look for ways that we can get ourselves back on the right foot and start to really pay down that debt so that our future generations aren't saddled having to come up and find ways to basically pay for what we're putting in place now.
Oh, that's a good question. I think for me the priority is definitely a plan for reconciliation, focusing on our Indigenous Canadians, getting them clean drinking water, getting them the help that they need, and also centering them in our climate change conversations.
I hope that the government that's in place now can work together for a period of time of at least 3 or 4 years, frankly, to get some things done. I recognize that in a minority government there are going to be issues, but maybe that's a positive thing. Maybe it's an opportunity for us to actually get together, work together as 2 or 3 different parties, try to identify the key issues, and actually make some progress towards addressing those issues. I personally don't think we can continue to spend on the same volume of spending that we're doing now without at the same time addressing the reality of how as a country we're going to leave this to our children and our grandchildren. That's a major concern for me.
Got any thoughts on that one?
Finish the pandemic. Let's get it done. Let's get everybody vaccinated and get back to normal as quickly as we can, and then invite tourists from other places.
I would like to see more programs for people who have been suffered through this last year or two. I think we're a very wealthy nation. Most people have lots of things, but there's a lot of people who need some help, and I think we could still do a lot to help people.
I'd like to see some movement on the environment, I think. And I mean, basically, there's a number of things they got to look at. I mean, even like healthcare in terms of the aging population and stuff like that. I think they need to prioritize a couple of issues like that and just move forward on them, if they can, in a minority parliament, so we shall see.
Well, besides the pandemic, I think that Definitely the economy in Canada has gone down, so I think that we need to work to kind of build up our economy and kind of work through this pandemic together, because I feel like there's a lot of different sides, and just work towards the Canada that we know and love.
This world is being bought every second of every day, and it's truly showing within our government, and that our leaders are just puppets. And I think a big change needs to happen, and actually we need to start looking out for our country rather than all these big corporations focusing on their pockets and how big their wallet is.
I think the Indigenous conversation must be given a real priority. I think we also must look at equality amongst the provinces, and this us and them is getting a little tired. I think for us to think globally, we have to start that at home, and that is our boundaries are there for a reason, but they don't need to be us and them all the time.
I'd like to see our government address our housing crisis. I see COVID, I see COVID, I see COVID, and I see COVID, but not once do I see them addressing our housing issue.
So I'm pretty sure you're just going to see some mockery of the Canadian democratic system that we used to have. We used to actually have a somewhat believable election, and I don't see it as being believable now. And all they're going to do as soon as they open the parliament is start shoving more stuff down people's throats. They're not going to fix nothing.
While the election grind has ended, for newly elected MPs and those returning to Ottawa, the hard work hasn't even begun. During the campaign, candidates from across the country were knocking on doors, talking to voters about the issues, trying to drum up their support. We took to the streets to ask Canadians if this election covered the topics essential to their everyday life. Our question:
did this election highlight the issues important to you?
It did. One thing that's really on my mind is clean energy. I'm a firm believer that if we don't fix the environment soon, we're going to go backwards. So I'm all for climate change and stuff. I wish that Trudeau didn't really throw an election during the pandemic. But at the end of the day, I feel like him and the Conservatives and NDPs are going to do a good job. So for me, climate change is very important.
Not as much. I think like housing and debt, and like especially in Byward right now, we see a lot of homelessness and not enough support for that. Yeah, there's a lot of things. I think it was overly focused on vaccines and whatnot, when there's other issues that need to be brought into the conversation.
No, not really. I found that the election, because it was done during the pandemic, didn't really get the outreach that an election normally would. I would normally be more engaged. And I think quite a lot of the topics that were discussed had little to do with what was important to me at the time.
It's almost as though they tried to, but from what I gathered, everyone had very similar answers from very different parties. So I found it very interesting.
Not well enough. I think there were several issues that they glossed over. I'm quite frankly a little disappointed in the way our leaders of all parties spent most of their time performing rather than actually looking at what the issues are and addressing them in some concrete fashion. So I thought of it more of a day of question period in Parliament than I did really about what was going on.
No.
Some?
It should not have been called because of the pandemic, and he still had 18 months to go, so he should have waited.
Issues-wise, well, housing, very important. The debt. He's spending too much money. He's making it worse for us. Maybe not for us, but for our kids and our grandkids.
Not really. I would say the environment is very important. I think that was kind of left behind to a certain extent. Yeah. So no, I mean, these elections come down to people basically promising, you know, how much money can we throw out there and make you happy or whatever, and that's what it seemed to be a contest. That's what the contest seemed to be about. Less about issues, I found. Period.
I would say that this election definitely tackled, climate change, Indigenous issues, but I think the sentiment that a lot of Canadians are feeling, that it was kind of expensive and did nothing, basically the most expensive cabinet shuffle of all time. So I don't think, really, to answer your question, that we went further enough in discussing the issues. I think a lot of times during the debates, questions were dodged, answers were dodged.
It's hard to form a direct opinion where I would act. That's why I really don't vote, right? Because at the end of the day, half of them say stuff that doesn't get done anyway, so they're not held accountable, right?
I noticed a lot of the issues were actually that were brought, especially in the debates by the oppositions, they were just brushed off, and it was more focused on the little bits that were done over the last 4 years and just defending himself instead of actually coming up with real results as to what was done because of the 4-year term. So no, I was actually quite disappointed.
Yes and no.
That depends. I think some of the issues that are important to me weren't necessarily addressed, but not that they didn't address any issues.
It did, but nothing really changed. I'm not confident that something will change in the near future unless we make some big changes. I don't know.
Well, initially, this election highlighted the issues that were important to me, but as time went on, it seemed like everybody forgot about the real issues and were mudslinging, and the issues kind of got forgotten.
So many of them were, and I don't think any of them are going to be addressed properly by any one party. I think everybody's trying their hardest, and I don't think that anybody's going to really achieve anything in the current situation, which is really sad.
No, I don't think so. Not what I would have liked to seen highlighted. So no, this election was a waste of time, money, and effort on, Trudeau did the worst thing possible by calling this election as far as I'm concerned.
I think some of the platforms did, but I'm not happy with the results, to be honest.
Some of them, I found this election, like most people, it was just a kind of a non-event. Nothing changed. Basically, we're back where we started. You know, everybody's complaining about the $600 million. So it was kind of a futile effort on behalf of the Liberals. So, but it is what it is. We just carry on and move on and see what happens, I guess.
How many times has a sitting Prime Minister lost their seat in a general election? 0, 3, or 5?
3 maybe?
I'd say 0.
Yeah, 0.
0.
I'm going to say 3.
I want to say 3. Complete guess. I'm going to go with 5.
I'll say 3.
It's 5. Oh, good for you, man.
Thank you.
During an election campaign, some might say a federal riding belonging to a prime minister can usually be considered a safe bet for the prime minister to win, but that isn't always the case. Prime ministers losing their seat in a general election while in office happened on 5 occasions since 1867, with 2 prime ministers experiencing it not once, but twice. In the December 1921 general election, Prime Minister Arthur Meehan lost his Portage-La Prairie, Manitoba seat. He was defeated once again while in office, losing his seat in the September 1926 general election. William Lyon Mackenzie King, while one of Canada's longest-serving prime ministers, was also defeated twice in his own riding while Prime Minister. He lost his North York, Ontario seat in the October 1925 general election, and once again almost 20 years later in the June 1945 general election when he lost his seat in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. Then, in 1993, it happened a 5th time. Less than 6 months after becoming Canada's first female Prime Minister, Kim Campbell was defeated in her Vancouver Centre riding.
With the majority of Canadians double vaccinated, the COVID numbers we've been seeing around the country as of late have been distressing, to say the least. The majority of these infections are, of course, among the unvaccinated, with a small portion including those who have received 2 shots. New variants are, of course, a massive concern, but whether or not you got your shot, Do you feel truly protected? Our question.
How much confidence do you have in COVID-19 vaccines?
They seem safe to me. I mean, they're produced by companies that have a very large stake. It's Pfizer and Moderna are obviously very important companies. They're traded publicly on the stock exchange. So if there were to be problems, that would absolutely destroy those companies. So I don't think there's any real reason to think that they're ineffective.
You're shutting down more of your autoimmune ability to develop that immunity because you're introducing so much synthetic into it. You're actually shutting down your natural body's ability to produce those. You're creating a short-term band-aid for the people that are more susceptible, but for everyone else, you're actually hurting them physically more so than anything.
Actually, the vaccine is very strong. I really believe on the vaccine, which is proved by the Canadian government. There are 4 or 5 vaccines proved by the Canadian government, so everybody should get vaccinated as soon as possible, which help to prevent the COVID-19.
For us to get back to a normal world, I guess, right? Like, you got to get everyone aboard, and pretty much once everyone gets vaccinated, and if they don't, then they don't. But once everything goes back to normal, then hey, obviously we can have our mask off. We can go back to a normal life.
I took the jabs, and I got long COVID, and I haven't been the same since. And I'm wondering about the booster. I don't know. I'm a little bit afraid of it.
I mean, at the beginning, I was like very scared of everything. But now that I have both my vaccines, a lot of my friends do, I feel more safe. And especially working at a restaurant, like, you're going around, people have no masks on. But I would say I'm very confident in it. I believe in it.
I have a lot of confidence, actually, like a ton. I personally feel like the fact that 88% of Ontario is vaccinated, I don't really think there's an excuse to not be vaccinated. I'm all for it. I actually have both myself. But in terms of vaccines, I really think it's important that everyone's vaccinated.
No, I think we'll always have COVID-19 with us. It'll be just different aspects of it.
I don't know, we've been vaccinated for years, like whatever, it's just another vaccine. We all got vaccinated as kids, same thing. I don't see smallpox anywhere.
Based on the science that I've seen in videos and read online, I suppose it's gives me the confidence to get the double vaccine, and I don't have an issue with the science behind it.
I have a lot of confidence in the vaccines. I think that they've definitely been tested around the world, and they seem to be bringing in very large numbers that say that it is a safe vaccine.
I got both shot, and nothing happened to me so far. So hopefully we are in the right direction. So we have to wait and see.
I firmly believe in the COVID vaccine. Those that don't, I think, are talking out of the wrong end. It's just like the smallpox, the polio vaccination, all of those have proved only to be benefits of everybody. And the COVID falls in that rank. If people could just see or recognize the deaths of these people and the quality of life they have after the fact is horrible. So no, COVID, I think people are really dumb not to take their shots.
Yes, and I think it's better than nothing. And I mean, I came through the generation where we all got vaccinations as kids without any question at all, and we're all better off for it. And I think that that's the way we've got to go with this one as well.
It's kind of our only option at this point, I think, going forward. So I'd like to think that it's well researched and well documented enough to at least bring us to the next phase of the pandemic. I guess that flatten the curve thing kind of went out the window, but you know, I mean, it seems to be working for the most part, especially in other places where they're more vaccinated than us.
So far it's working okay, but it's not perfect. Hopefully they can have something better than just vaccines. I mean, some medication or something like that.
I have confidence that it protects me from heavy symptoms. So I believe I
believe that it protects me from ending up in the hospital and being ventilated.
Yes, absolutely. I was a public health nurse for 30 years, and with all the good technology now and research, I believe the vaccines are very safe and they don't take as long to develop as they did, say, years ago for the smallpox. So I have 100% faith in the vaccines.
I absolutely have confidence in the COVID-19 vaccine. I believe that we've done a lot of scientific study on it, and Health Canada wouldn't approve any vaccine that it wasn't completely confident in the science behind it.
I do have confidence in the COVID vaccines, and that's vaccines, I might add, because there's Moderna, and there's Pfizer, and there's Johnson & Johnson, and I personally have had 3 Moderna shots. And I understand Moderna is the best one of all, scientifically. I even invested in Moderna's stock, and I'm doing well there.
Many people will tell you how unrepentantly proud they are to be a Canadian. And in just over 150 years of existence, Canada has established itself as a proud and peaceful nation admired around the world. We took to the streets to ask Canadians how they feel we are perceived beyond our borders. Our question:
how do you feel Canada is viewed by other nations?
You know, I would say positively. I think that I wouldn't consider myself a world traveler, but through different jobs I've had, I've interacted with people from South Africa and Europe and South America, and I think definitely from my perspective and my opinion would say that we're viewed positively for the most part. I think people like us. I think we're fairly friendly. I like Canadians. I mean, I am one, so I'm biased, but I think that we're viewed, yeah, very, very positively.
Oh, I feel like they could just tell us, the rest of the countries can just take advantage of us, do whatever they want, say whatever they want, and we'll just do whatever we're told. You know, I feel like we need to, you know, be out on the forefront of innovation and tech and natural resources and stuff like that. And I feel like other countries could just walk all over us.
Perhaps not as good as we were at one time in some categories, but I think we're growing on a global stage on some other areas. Certainly, I think we can lead by example in some of our more liberal programs. However, I think the bigger elephant in the room is how does the world view the states these days and where they have changed their position in the world.
Sometimes, like, I know it's been traveling. I've traveled quite a bit, and a lot of times other nations uses the Canada flag when they're traveling. So, you know, that speaks volumes for me about our role and how the way we're viewed throughout the world.
I think Canada is viewed in a lower value by other nations.
If you're looking at life where you want to grow your kids to have values, you don't want them to today say this is right and tomorrow it is wrong. You want to ensure that certain principles of absoluteness and certain ethical principles are not just taught, but something that is appreciated and engraved in their minds and how they see life. That's how I see it.
I think Canada has a great reputation internationally. I think that we're sort of seen as a world player, but less big than some of the big countries. So not so much as somebody who would push another country around, but somebody who would be there to help.
No, I think Canada is viewed positively by other nations. I think we've done a really good job at getting out there and, you know, showing that we're a good partner, we're a good a good collaborator in terms of, you know, helping with the world peace and things of that nature. So I think we've set ourselves up well on the world stage in order to continue that positive outlook or positive trend.
Afghanistan and our position towards that wasn't quite what I thought the world thought it should be. So overall, I'm glad to be a Canadian, though, so rather than an American. So what can one say?
And I would say personally that right now Canada is losing its international reputation. Perhaps they're more successful behind the scenes. That I can't tell you, but from a public standpoint, I would say that we aren't in the same level of status, if I call it that, as maybe we had a couple of decades ago.
I think we're viewed as generally friendly. It's almost a joke, but I think that we're progressive enough and we're friendly enough to be recognized nicely on a world scale.
I feel that Canada is viewed by other nations mostly as a country who has been able to manage the pandemic at a better rate due to its first world status and being able to buy vaccine in bulks. However, the population do not seem to be interested in getting vaccinated. So I will say people in other countries will have liked to be able to get vaccinated as quickly as the Canadian population.
That's a good question. I always thought we saw it in a good way. I think Canada is a nice place. It has good places to stay, to live, including like Calgary or Toronto or Vancouver. Of course, there are pros and cons of each place. But you have a lot of nature and lots of beautiful places to go and come and see. That's why we came here with my wife. There are one thing which I don't like. I've noticed some things are more expensive than like in the UK or US, and slightly lower salaries, which is kind of a downside for the Canadian people. But I hope that will improve, and hopefully the government can make it better in the future.
I think, and I've traveled quite a bit, I think Canada is highly respected by other nations, and I have family in the US, and they try to come to Canada as often as possible, spend their summers and stuff here, and just from their perspective, what they've told me and how they act, they really think that Canada is doing the right thing, and they really respect Canada and Canadians.
Canada, if viewed by other nations, is one of the best countries in the whole world, where everybody have chance to succeed, to thrive, to have all the benefit any citizen aiming for, especially, you know, the freedom we enjoy in Canada. The most important thing, the freedom, and also the social program from healthcare. I think we should be a role model for the whole world.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.